Three, two, one.
Welcome in Life in the Red podcast. I'm Chris. There's Parker. No Steve today counting us in. So we brought in Parker to do that for us. Steve is unavoidably detained
Bullpen
at the
arm.
moment.
Yeah.
So
Somewhere
we'll
in the
soldier
wide
on.
world.
Yeah, he's as he usually is. He showed up to baseball yesterday on the Harley to talk to Will Bolt, which I kind of gave a little fist pump when I pulled into the parking lot and saw the Harley.
Best winter ever.
Oh my God, seriously. Will Bolt's saying that. They've been outside like 20 times this year. It's crazy.
It's as soon as the season starts, though, the March snow will commence here.
That home opener March 11th is guaranteed.
Guaranteed.
Like 38.
Guaranteed.
Flurries, yeah. Wind blowing about 30 miles.
Heart of spring ball for Nebraska. They'll be in the Hawks because snow will be piled up outside.
Yeah, exactly. Long Beach State's going to come strolling in here middle of March from California and turn right back around and get on the plane and head back home. So we will talk some baseball here in a little bit. We'll also touch on a little bit of football, a little bit of hoops. Get you out of here quick, easy breezy on a Wednesday afternoon, 3:44 p.m., February 16th, 2022. I hope you all had a wonderful Valentine's Day. I know I did. Very romantic, covering the things I cover at home.
Very romantic with a 1-year-old and a flailing basketball program.
Yeah, it's great. But that's neither here nor there. So let's talk a little football. We'll get right into it. Adrian Martinez, former Nebraska quarterback, did his podcast earlier this week. Had some really, really, really interesting comments about his broken jaw and the procedure that he went through to deal with that. I think you and I agree, Parker. That was probably the most, among many interesting things that came out of that. That was probably the most interesting thing that came out of that. Just what Adrian put himself through, having screws inserted into his gums and having his jaw rubber banded shut so that he could continue to play. Just kind of a wild story.
Yeah, put that on the list of things I just would prefer not to sign up to do in my life. Get 6 screws drilled into my gums.
God,
if it can be avoided, I'll pass on that.
Like him talking about how they had to go between the teeth so they didn't hit the roots of the teeth with the screws they were drilling into his gums. God.
And also
the screws tightened every week or whatever it was.
Yeah. Like, did you ever have braces?
I didn't. No, luckily.
Yes, I busted face in general. Braces when I was young, and even when they tighten the braces, that would hurt, really hurt.
Oh yeah.
Teeth move around a little bit, and I had one that had to pull it down, and so it moved, probably a quarter inch, half an inch over a couple days, and it just hurt like hell.
Oh God!
I mean, I can't imagine. And then to think about having screws drilled in your gums, I mean, that is just
Then taking hits in Big Ten football games.
Yeah, right. Also, not planning on putting a steak in a blender anytime soon. And it all sort of it all added up. I mean, it's very interesting listening to Adrian talk about his year. It's really the first. I think he talked maybe down in Manhattan, Kansas State, news conference setting a week or so ago. I didn't see his full comments there. And so I guess it was the most extensively he's talked about Nebraska. And I think there's a natural reaction to some of this that's he was here for 4 years. He played a lot of football for Nebraska. Everyone who's a Nebraska fan obviously knows at least some about the football element of Adrian Martinez's time here. But he doesn't play here anymore. So some people are don't care, move on. He's Kansas State's quarterback. Why are we talking about this? Some people he clearly wasn't happy with the way that the news about his broken jaw was disseminated that day of the Ohio State game. Gus Johnson mentioned it on the broadcast. Scott Frost brought it up on his own after the game in the post-game news conference. So there's that element of it. There's the sort of anytime a high-profile guy decides to transfer, he talked pretty generically about making that decision. So it all it's perfect off-season fodder in a way. But the thing, honestly, is the thing that I came away from thinking most out of all the stuff, whether it's that Frost do wrong by him by talking about the jaw when people like knew something was wrong but didn't know the extent of it, and who said what after the season and all that stuff. Honestly, the thing that struck me the most was the lengths that Adrian went to stay on the field last year. It's just insane to go through all that and to play, and then to have the high ankle sprain, which we also knew about the Tuesday before the Minnesota game, and to just continue playing until he literally tore his labrum.
Until he literally could not play anymore.
And an ankle injury, screws in his gums and an ankle injury. Then he tore his labrum against Wisconsin.
And still kind of wanted to play, and still tried to like give it a go after he tore his labrum.
He played. He played an entire second half against Wisconsin.
He played. Yeah.
And so like that was what stuck out to me, was like people invariably will have opinions about Adrian Martinez. And he said during that podcast to like, I understand I'm not unique. Like the whole thing with the news coming out about is like, I guess you'd prefer for the source of that sort of news coming out. Like if you're him, you don't want it to leak, and you probably prefer that if it's going to, that your head coach isn't the source of it coming out. But like, so yeah, I mean, that's all is what it is. But man, I mean, the kid, just one thing nobody can ever question about him is just what he was willing to go through. Frankly, all 4 years he was here, to stay on the field and try to play and try to help.
It's just the threshold for pain, like, is phenomenal. And like football players are tough, like we get that. And that's part of the deal. But man, yeah, like he went above and beyond, and especially in the context of what he was asked to do for Nebraska, which was basically everything when they were on offense most of 4 years. Like it adds a whole other layer to just kind of his story here. And like you said, he's not Nebraska's quarterback anymore. Some people are probably sick of hearing this, whatever, but this is what it is. Dude was tough, and dude played through a lot and was asked to do a whole hell of a lot while playing through a lot. So yeah, just pretty incredible what he went through just to even get on the field.
There's also just like this element of like with Nebraska, of like, of course it would happen that way, like some of it's unavoidable. Some of it's just freak stuff that happened, like Jordan Riley rolling up on his ankle in practice, and injuring him further. But it's like, like they were sort of laughing about it, like he had the screws put in, and then they played Northwestern. He like ran for a couple touchdowns like in the first quarter. It's like, I guess not really running less, and then like he took hits obviously over the course of the season and got hurt further and all of that. And it just is like, it's a shame for him. I'm sure that there's part of him that's like, he said it's like, well, it's all part of the experience and you learn about yourself and all of that. But like, man, to put yourself through that and then go 3-9.
Yeah, it's a hell of an experience if you want to talk about it being all part of the experience.
Character building.
Yeah. Nobody's got more character than Adrian, if that's the case.
It's all that type 2 fun.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's Adrian.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the current team now. Spring ball is a little more than a week away. Basically,
how about that?
Yeah, a little less than 2 weeks. 28th. Is that the first day?
Yeah. Yep. A week from Monday.
Week from Monday. There you go. So obviously we won't get to see a whole lot of that, other than maybe some guys stretching for 15 minutes before practice starts.
Pretty much.
We won't glean a whole lot out of this new coaching staff, these new additions to the roster, those sorts of things. But I guess, Parker, what's maybe a thing or two you're kind of looking at as you kind of gear up here over these next couple of weeks and this gets going?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interest I think there's a lot of unknowns, and that's always the case to some degree. It always makes a difference in terms of like sort of how zippy you think spring ball is going to be, depending on what's happening at quarterback. And even if you are of the mind that Casey Thompson, as a veteran and 10-game starter last year in the Big 12, is the favorite to win the job, which he probably is. I mean, he's got to win the job, but he's got easily the most experience. It still is going to be very interesting, just in the sense that they've got 3 new scholarship guys there and all of that. There's just so much there's so much uncertainty on the offensive line. There's 16 new guys in the program. They have depth issues on the defensive line at this point, and wide open races in the secondary. Like, it feels like, and 5 running backs, and I guess Ramir Johnson's the favorite, at this point, but you can see any number of guys sort of like grabbing that mantle by August. So like everywhere you look, even like tight end, which tight end is among the more boring positions on the roster because Travis Vokalek's back and Sean Beckton, the coach, is back and all of that.
Yeah.
Like even there, like Vokalek's out for most of the spring with he had surgery after the season, shoulder surgery. So like that's when they roll out the number 1 offense on the first day of spring ball, like you're probably talking about some combination of Thomas Fidone, Chance Brewington, Chris Hickman. And like, so that even that's going to be interesting. So it's like the middle of the winter, spring ball's starting, and there's just a lot of uncertainty and a lot of things to ask coaches and players about when we don't actually get to see them on the field.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I completely lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, Parker, I'm going to hang you out to dry here. I had a thought and now I can't remember what it was.
That's fine.
That's spring ball in a nutshell, though, right?
That's spring ball in a nutshell.
What's going on, and then you
look out shiny object over here, right? About
that. Oh, hey, yeah, look at that. Yeah.
What do you think? Okay, so how about this? Like, there's a lot of, so that's like there's all this player stuff. Then there's more overarching questions, like especially on offense about how the system comes together and all of that. Like, you heard Mickey Joseph on the early signing day, and he said this since too. Like, he's convinced that they're going to throw the ball a lot, maybe not 65% or anything like that, but a lot under Mark Whipple. And that talk hasn't diminished any as they start to like put the system in place and all of that. Like, is that, Nebraska fans as well as anybody, like, are there going to be some nervous Nellies? Are we going to get some hand wringing when Mickey Joseph is flaunting how much they're going to put the ball in the air this spring as spring ball goes on?
Well, and think about how much hand wringing there was the last 4 years when they ran it more than they threw it. Now it was close. I mean, it was now it wasn't 65-35 or anything like that. But what did we hear all the whole time? Run the damn ball. And now you're talking about throwing.
They got the hats.
65%. Yeah. Now you're talking about throwing it 65% of the time. But you know what? It's what we just talked about, right? Like there's not a lot of proven guys at running back. Ramir Johnson's probably the guy. You've got what looks like a pretty good quarterback coming in, a guy that led the Big 12 in touchdown passes last year, assuming he starts. Receiver is obviously a question mark, but there's some potential there. And so why wouldn't you, at least early on, throw it more when your strength on offense looks like it's going to be quarterback, probably tight end, probably wide receiver over running back, at least early on. And that's not to say Nebraska won't run it more as the year goes on, but yeah, there'll be a lot of this going on. That first game when Nebraska's coming out and throwing it a bunch and not establishing the run against an overmatched foe. So
they're going to call it the Aer Lingus offense in Ireland. The Nebraska football offense, there it is, brought to you by Aer Lingus.
Sponsored by Aer Lingus. Trevor Purdy's going to come out and talk in an Irish accent for some reason.
That just you couldn't entertain me more.
It'd be incredible. It'd be incredible. Yeah, no, it's one of those. It's one part of many, as you said, one part of many interesting parts to this whole thing. Is just what will it look like? Not only in spring ball, but will it look different in spring ball than it does in that first game over in Ireland? So.
Then the next question is, how closely guarded will that? No one is going to say anything interesting about the offense this spring.
No, it's going to be state secrets for sure until that first. And even in that first game, like you have to think, like Nebraska's going to try to win the game, of course, but you have to think if they can do it in as vanilla a way as possible, like they're probably going to do it. Like it's not like you need to be really fancy to beat Northwestern necessarily. You just have to be able to execute. Northwestern's not a team where you have to junk it up a whole lot generally.
Right. Well, that's didn't they run the ball? They ran for like some of it was Adrian, but I think they run for like 350 yards against.
Yeah, it was like an insane number. Yeah, that was the first game they really like went full out with the option stuff.
That's another part of the conversation. Is like, I mean, it's obviously the thing about Whipple is, and I think, we've only talked to him the one time on December 15th. He's been around the game for so long. Like, he's definitely like when he was a head coach at UMass, they threw the ball all over the place. But that was in part because they had Adam Brenneman, and then they had Andy Isabella, tight end.
And NFL guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the thing with Whipple has always been, and this is what I gleaned in talking to people who coached against him last year, he's a type of guy that force feeds, like whoever your playmaker is, he just force feeds him the ball, and that sometimes that's like this last year at Pitt, it was Jordan Addison. They had a great quarterback, obviously, in Kenny Pickett. Jordan Addison was a receiver, and they just targeted him constantly. And that, at UMass, it was Brenneman, and then it was Andy Isabella. But there's also been times in his career, like when he was with the Steelers, where it's more about running the football. Like I don't think it's going to be ground and pound necessarily.
Yeah.
And if you look at how you would project their strengths right now, which we'll see, you would probably, like you said earlier, Baz, like quarterback and receivers. But I don't know, like you can't coach in the AFC North and not believe in running the football. I think that's probably impossible. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes together.
Well, and part of that too is how the offensive line develops, right? Like if they can't move guys off the ball in practice, or if they can't move guys off the ball, in some of those early games, then they're probably going to chuck it quite a bit, and turn the passing game into the running game. That'll saying you hear all the time on TV. So it's like everything else. There's a million different things that go into it. It's personnel, and it's how that personnel executes in relation to the rest of the unit. So we'll have to see.
Yeah,
go ahead.
That speaking of the offensive line, I just think, to me, like there's so many different combinations that could develop, I guess, over the next few months. There's no guarantee that any of them are going to lead to massive improvement. Although it obviously could. But I think the thing, like, I can't think of a position on the roster that I have less an idea of what it's going to look like than center.
Oh yeah.
Like it could just be as simple as like Ethan Piper this spring, and then Turner Corcoran, like when he gets healthy. Trent Hickson is a sort of trusty veteran backup type. Could be it. But like, if you gave me who takes the first snap at center against Northwestern in August, and you said Corcoran, Piper, Hickson, transfer, I would not know what to tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, because Corcoran, like, that'd be interesting to see, but maybe he gets healthy this summer and they put him back at right tackle and Teddy's at left tackle, it's every guy like Piper. Okay. He's athletic and he's smart and all of that, but like you've really struggled consistently, and you cannot have that at center. And Hickson was a starter in 18.
Yeah.
Hasn't been since. Clearly they think other guys talent wise have passed them up. And then you never know what they're going to do transfer wise. So like, just every guy there, you could squint and see it. And then there's also reason to be like, I'm not sure about that.
We talk about entertainment value for our own selfish reasons. Like this center thing is fascinating, and they get it all sorted out. Whoever it is, fly over to Ireland, first game, first snap goes over the quarterback's head. Like first snap immediately is a wild snap, just like they dealt with Cam Jurgens. Like that would be entertaining to me personally. It would not be entertaining to a lot of people.
Not to the players, the coaches, or any Nebraska fan on the planet, but us, I guess. Yes.
All right, let's keep this baby moving here. We're going to shift over to baseball. Not the most seamless transition ever, but whose season does start in a few days. That's baseball. Friday at Sam Houston State, 6:30 p.m. first pitch, I believe, down in lovely Huntsville, Texas. They're going to play a 4-game series, doubleheader Saturday, finish it up on Sunday. As interesting as football is going to be this year, I put baseball almost on that same level, just because of what happened last year, the absolute stars they lost from last year's team, and they lost stars. Let's not make any jokes. Let's not make any bones about it. You know, they lost some big time dudes, and also because you just hear the confidence when Will Bolt talks in his team, and our esteemed colleague Mr. Sipple wrote about this in his column for today. You know, just the guy exudes confidence all the time, and it bleeds down to his players, and they talk plainly about it. They want to host a regional, they want to win a super regional, and they want to go to Omaha and play in the College World Series. And there's a lot of teams that want to do that, sure, but it feels a lot closer for Nebraska than it did even at the beginning of last season when they weren't even picked in the top 6 in the Big Ten preseason poll, which for some reason only picked 6 teams because that's how we do things in the Big Ten.
Yeah, why not?
But why not? So just it's fascinating in that they're going to have to replace some big stars. It's fascinating that they're going to be playing with a target on their back for really the first time for a full season. It's fascinating to me because this is going to be Will Bolt's first full season as a head coach. Like,
isn't that crazy?
Coached 15 games his first year in 2020, Big Ten only last year until the regional. Now, God willing, hopefully it's a full season
right
this year. And so there's that part of it too. What does it look like for Nebraska in the midweeks, in the non-conference? What if they go down to Sam Houston and they split or they lose 3 out of 4? You know, it's going to be different than it was maybe last year with Big Ten.
Yeah.
So there's just so many interesting parts of this. They named the starting rotation a couple days ago. I know real surprises. Kyle Perry, Shea Shanneman leading it off. 1A, 1B. Your 2 veteran guys, probably the guys you'd expect. Then Dawson McCarville, the Grand Canyon transfer, who was really good over the second half of last season for the Lopes. And then Braxton Bragg in that 4th spot, who probably becomes like your midweek guy when you're not playing a 4-game series. So kind of got a hint into what that's going to look like. We kind of have an idea what the position players are going to look like, what the lineup's going to look like. And it's got to be a lot of young guys. You know, just going around the infield, you're probably going to go sophomore, freshman, sophomore around the infield. And look, they're going to be good and they're going to be athletic, but they're going to be young. And the outfield, you're replacing your top 4 outfielders, basically. Yep. So there's a lot of questions with this team. I think they're going to be good. I don't know if they have the stars they had last year, but they've got a lot of really good players, a lot of talent. So I'm fascinated to see how this looks and how these roles kind of get filled out, especially over these first few weeks of the season.
So I have questions. Obviously, you know, we saw Perry a little bit, obviously last year. So I'm curious about Shanneman and Bragg in particular. I guess I know the least about those 2. Like, I guess with Bragg first, like what's his story? How did he make?
What's his deal?
What's your deal,
Braxton Bragg? Been around for a couple of years.
Name. I mean, that's a good baseball name.
It's a great baseball name. He's been a bullpen guy. He was a bullpen guy last year, and it was actually really good out of the pen for like the first half of the year, and then just kind of lost it the second half of the year. Really struggled, but a guy that he's kind of in the mold of what this coaching staff looks for in a pitcher. He's a bigger kid. He's going to throw hard, and he's going to throw a lot of strikes. And that sounds easy enough: throw hard, throw strikes, but there's a difference between throwing and pitching. And so that's kind of the next step, I think, for Braxton Bragg. He's always been highly thought of, I think, by this coaching staff since they got here. And they've always kind of seen him as a guy that could potentially be a starter, or like last year was more of a long relief type situation. And they've got a lot of guys like that. It could have been Braxton Bragg. It could have been Jake Buns. It could have been Cody Frank. It could have been Mason. It could have been any number of guys in that 4th spot. But, Braxton Bragg, when he played summer ball, they made him a starting pitcher, and he was great. I think he had 24 strikeouts to 3 walks over the summer, which is kind of what you're looking for in your starting pitcher. So that's kind of the situation, I think, where they like their depth at pitching, is that, it's Braxton Bragg this weekend, but it might be, somebody else next week or next Tuesday. And the kid's got talent. They really like his talent. That's what it comes down to. I mean, he's been more consistent with it, in the fall and in the spring here. And I think that's why he got that 4th spot, right out of the gate. So I know baseball isn't everybody's cup of tea, but guess what? That's the best men's program on campus right now for Nebraska. It's going to take them probably 2 or 3 weeks to equal the win total for the men's basketball team, which is currently at 7, in case you didn't know that. So
there's that. And I don't have the luxury this year of like already caring a lot about spring training baseball. So I've got to get my baseball fix in some way. This is going to be it.
That's a thing, right? Like, how many more people are gonna watch college baseball this year? Because that's what it is. And if Nebraska makes a statement early on, if they go down and play well against Sam Houston State, if they go down and play well against TCU, who's ranked 17th in the country, all of a sudden, you want to be a national program, you're going to be well on your way, especially with the way things ended last year. And if you start hot this year, and Will Bolt and all those players will tell you, we got to take it day by day, step by step, and all those sorts of things. But if you're, looking ahead, a month from now, Nebraska's got a chance to really capture a lot of people's attention. And so that plays into this too. So yeah, it might be a deal where that's something that helps Nebraska. It might be a deal where it hurts them if they struggle. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to watch, I think, for baseball. Let's wrap this up with a little bit of hoops. Decidedly less interesting at this point. Nebraska.
Except for Amy Williams' team.
Amy Thrilliams and the girls dominating Indiana the other night. Shout out to them. Leading by 21 at one point in the fourth quarter, a 17-0 run in crunch time. Just super impressive. First team to score more than 70 against the Hoosiers this year, which is pretty amazing when you think about some of the teams in the Big Ten. They got it going, and they're probably looking at 6, 7, 8 seed right now in the NCAA tournament. That's pretty favorable.
When you got like multiple weeks left in the season, anything is possible, obviously.
Yeah.
But that was a pretty emphatic ticket punch to the dance, I think, when you beat a top 5 team and the team that Indiana was leading the Big Ten 10-1.
Yeah.
When you beat a team like that, you're talking about an NCAA tournament team. I know they've been in the in or around the field for a good chunk of the year, but man, I mean, they're going to make the tournament at this point is the way it's looking.
In my mind, and I admittedly don't follow the women's game as closely, but in my mind, that was maybe the one hole in their resume was they didn't really have a ton of the marquee wins. They'd beaten Michigan earlier in the year at home. But you lose to Iowa twice, you lose to Maryland, a traditional power in your conference, and you've been close in a couple of those games, but you haven't gotten over the hump. So to do that in the manner in which they did it, yeah, you're right. That's about as close to locking it up as you can get, again, with a month left in the season.
Yeah, right.
At this point, so a long way to go. But
you don't want to lose out and lose early in the tournament or anything like that. But
yeah, exactly. So that's the women. The men, meanwhile, are going to play an 8 p.m. Friday night game against Maryland, who is 3-11 that's going to be 1-13 in the conference against 3-11 in the conference at 8 p.m. on a Friday night. So I'm putting the over under on scan tickets at 5,000 right now in Pinnacle Bank.
Pretty rough.
I mean, it is what it is. And, somebody asked me the question earlier today, is it to the point now where you're basically everybody's just kind of running out the clock on the season? And kind of feels like, right? Like there's obviously the intrigue of what will happen with Fred Hoiberg, what will happen with this staff, all that sort of stuff. But at this point, Nebraska's playing spoiler, but they're also playing spoiler when they went to Iowa coming off a win too. And then they gave up a 42-10 run and lost by almost 30. So there's opportunities there for a few wins, but look, they're going to be playing Wednesday in the Big Ten tournament in a playing game, probably against Penn State or Maryland again. And that's kind of the difference for Nebraska right now. You see some of these other teams at the bottom, and they play hard every time out. Maryland pushed Purdue to a 1-point game in West Lafayette. After getting smoked by Iowa a couple days prior. Penn State just beat Michigan State last night. And
I turned that game on, and Michigan State was up 12, I think, early in the second half. And I heard the first words I heard when I turned to put the game on TV was like Michigan State's first double-digit lead of the night. And then they went up maybe like it was 12 or 14. And I thought, this doesn't look like it's going to be interesting. And I just, for whatever reason, I left it on for a couple of minutes, and bam, Penn State was right back in, like 10-0 run.
Yeah.
They were right there.
Tough. I mean, they're not talented as a lot of these teams, but they play hard, and they play hard for 40 minutes. And, I hate to say this, but you can't say that about Nebraska. They just don't do it. And whatever the reason for that is at this point, it doesn't matter because you're 1-13 in the conference. The season is what it is. It's a lost cause at this point. So that's where we're at for Nebraska basketball. It's a pretty uplifting time right now over at PBA. We'll talk to Fred Hoiberg tomorrow, get his thoughts over the next couple of weeks here. But We're going to make it quick and easy for you. Get in, get out, enjoy your weekend. We'll talk to you next week. Hopefully we'll have all three of us back in the saddle, and we'll talk to you next time.